Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. So we got guys an update on a significant sequence of severe weather days that we need to talk about here across portions of the south central United States down into the southeast. We have a pretty significant chance of seeing tornadoes as well as damaging winds and very large hail. We also have an update on the tropics as we are starting to see some more activity in the Atlantic. I've got all the details coming right up. So thank you for joining me here on this Monday afternoon. We have a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to be going over all the latest information on really all the things that we just mentioned here. Again, we have a couple of pretty significant storm systems that are working their way through the United States today and over the next couple of days. And then obviously we got to take a look at what we got brewing in the tropics. We're going to start out here, as always, by taking a look at your current radar. You can see we got two things going on. One, we have a surface low that is currently bringing some severe thunderstorms across portions of the Ohio Valley. We have been talking about some isolated spots of damaging winds. If you look a little bit closer on this radar, you can see some areas of potential Boeing segments there. So we could definitely be talking about wind gusts of up to 70 miles per hour in some spots. And then finally, we also do have another storm system working its way across the Rockies and the mountainous regions of the western United States. This will eventually be driving our severe weather threat as we get into late tonight and tomorrow afternoon. And so you can see that storm system is also sliding its way off to the east here and kind of making its way into the big picture. But other than that, everyone's looking pretty good so far. And I hope you guys are having, obviously, a great start to your week. Yeah, so let's get right into it. So move on here to our current watches, warnings, and advisories. And you can see we got a couple things going on. One, we do have a flash flood warning across portions of southern Kansas, now into northeastern Oklahoma, southwestern Missouri, and northwestern Arkansas. This is going to be for those areas that have been receiving very, very heavy rain, but also will see even more rain, showers, and thunderstorms as we get into tonight, and especially into tomorrow, where we're going to see some pretty slow-moving severe thunderstorms. So I really do think that this is going to be a big area we need to watch out for obviously that flooding threat. But if you take a look out here in the portions of western Montana as well as down into Idaho, we do have some localized frost advisories. We are starting to see obviously very, very cold conditions spill into the northern United States. So if that does include your area, make sure that you are obviously paying attention to your local forecast and just bundling up in case it gets a little bit chilly out there. And then really that's pretty much it, other than a couple of dense fog advisories out here in northeastern Minnesota. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So move on here to the Storm Prediction Center Day 1 outlook. This is for today. We are greeted by 3 slight risks. These are level 2 out of 5 risks. The first one going out here for portions of northern Iowa down into eastern Nebraska. And then we have another slight risk, really our main slight risk, including portions of northern Oklahoma down into southwest Kansas. And then, once again, a third slight risk down into portions of southern Ohio and portions of central and eastern Kentucky. So all these areas are currently under the gun for really all hazards of severe weather, but obviously in those dark green shades we also have marginal risks. If you look at today's tornado threat, it is a 5% across portions of northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas. This recently did get upgraded to a little bit of a higher tornado threat than what we saw obviously yesterday and last night. We do have another 2% here across portions of eastern Nebraska and western Iowa, as well as a smaller 2% across portions of southern Wisconsin there. So 3 tornado threats today, all in separate areas. Our wind threat is a 15% non-hatch here for both of our, or really all 3 of our areas in that yellow shade, and a 5% in the brown shade. And finally, our hail threat is a 15 hatch for portions of eastern Nebraska, southern Kansas, northern Oklahoma, and then obviously those 15 non-hatched and 5 non-hatched for those surrounding areas. So move on here, we're going to take a look at your hour-by-hour outlook here from the HRRR here in southern Kansas and portions of Oklahoma. So we look at what we're going to be talking about for the rest of today. We get into really about 9-10 p.m. You can see our surface low starting to make its way into the picture here. And as it crosses through the Texas Panhandle, we do get storm initiation across portions of western Oklahoma near Elk City and Enid. And then these move their way off to the east. And I do think that right off the bat, we're probably going to be talking about a very large hail and damaging wind threat, but definitely some strong and disruptive storms across portions of northern Oklahoma, really just south of the border here near Enid and Ponca City. But definitely could see an isolated area of rotation or two. Excuse me. So I would definitely not rule out a couple of tornado warnings within these storms, as I really do think we could be talking about some strong areas of rotation. And obviously, you got to keep in mind this is where we do have that 5% tornado threat. But you can see as we get into right around 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, we do see the storms move their way into northeastern Oklahoma. Excuse me. And eventually they move their way off to the east throughout the Bartlesville, Stillwater, and Tulsa area. And they obviously will be dropping very, very heavy amounts of rainfall in a pretty quick amount of time, so make sure that you are being obviously cautious with and aware of that flash flooding threat. But you look at now your run to hour maximum updraft helicity swaths. This basically shows us where the ARRR is depicting the most amount of spin, or what we call helicity, in the atmosphere and within these storms. And you can see quite a few pockets here of what looks to be some strong rotation across portions of northern Oklahoma. So again, this is a couple counties to the north of Oklahoma City. Definitely got to watch out for a quick spin up, or even a couple of tornadoes, obviously, with that new addition of the 5%. And then you can see another area of some pretty strong helicity and spin across portions of eastern Oklahoma a little bit later into the event. So two areas that we really need to watch, but anywhere that's gonna get hit by these storms really needs to watch out for a quick spin up threat, because I really do think there will be the potential to see a couple tornadoes tonight into the early morning hours. Now we've moved things over to our threat here across portions of Arkansas as we get into tomorrow. And you can see that as this complex of storms continues to move off to the east, those showers and thunderstorms will die off a little bit, but they will leave a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. And so I really would like to take a look. Actually, we can just zoom in here on Arkansas itself with these storms. And obviously today we'll also get some rain, but this kind of goes into the flooding threat as well. That surface low, the remnants of the event that we're seeing tonight in Oklahoma, will place a lot of moisture and favorable atmospheric conditions for new storms to develop, much stronger storms to develop as we get into tomorrow afternoon. So this is as we're getting into about 3, 4, 5 p.m., right around where school gets out. And you can see lots of strong to severe supercells developing across portions of northern Arkansas. Likely we will see a semi-discrete threat and storm mode. But you can see areas south of Fayetteville and Mountain Home down towards Fort Smith and Russellville. We could be talking about also some storms potentially rotating, and I really do think that we need to watch out for a sneaky tornado threat. And we'll talk about the SPC in a second here, what they said about this threat. But those storms continue to move off to the south, and you see these little lines or these highlighted areas within these storms. This is where the ARRR is pointing that these storms will not only be severe and very strong, but could also contain helicity or spin, kind of like what we just talked about in Oklahoma. And you can see that line of storms continues to move off to the southeast and really causes a very disruptive afternoon and evening for our folks out here and across portions of central and northern Arkansas. So this is definitely something that we really need to keep an eye on, and I would not be surprised if we did see an upgrade from the Storm Prediction Center, which we'll get into here in just a second. But if you look at your bulk shear, which is basically just how much wind shear or how strong the winds aloft are, which because basically, in other words, is how disruptive the wind stream and pattern is above our heads. And you can see that we have very, very strong amounts of wind shear across portions of Arkansas. We're approaching 50 to 60 knots of wind shear, which is considered very favorable for supporting tornadic supercells. But even some isolated spots of 60, 0 to 6 bulk shear is going to be possible. So 60 knots is considered very, very high and potentially even extreme. So again, this is a very high sheared environment ahead of these storms, which likely will allow them to be capable of producing multiple tornadoes as we go into the afternoon and evening hours of tomorrow. So really got to watch out for our folks out there into Arkansas. And then another thing we do need to look at is our significant tornado parameter, which shows us kind of where we could see, which areas we could have the biggest threat of seeing tornadoes. And we'll start out here in Oklahoma, where with today's threat, there definitely is some highlighted areas here showing the threat for seeing a couple tornadoes, and we cannot rule out a strong tornado or even a significant tornado. I really do think in the worst case scenario, we could definitely be talking about maybe a strong tornado. Again, it's obviously it would have to come in a pretty serious uptrend, but the threat is definitely there. It's a pretty conditional threat, but if we do see kind of the best mode for severe weather, I mean, we're seeing values get up into the 3.5 and 4 range, and so that's usually when we need to start talking about the threat of a couple tornadoes, one in which could be strong. And then we look at Arkansas for tomorrow, and it looks potentially even more significant as we see values of well into the 4 range here. This is a pretty contaminated sounding, but you can see obviously just very, very high parameters. Obviously that photograph is pretty perfect there. So definitely a very high shear environment. Now, is it loaded gun? Definitely not, but it's definitely a scenario that we really need to watch out for, really from our folks out here in Little Rock points north. So again, today and tomorrow we're talking about a pretty significant tornado threat. And finally, you look at your run-to-hour maximum updraft helicity swaths for Arkansas. So we took a look at this just a couple moments ago for our Oklahoma event. And again, this is where we're talking about what areas the HRRR wants to see some rotation or spin helicity, like as we like to call it, in the atmosphere within these storms. And you can see quite a few spots here, really from Little Rock to the northwest, especially here on the Oklahoma-Arkansas border, where we really do need to worry about these areas for seeing a couple of tornadoes potentially, and even a strong tornado cannot be ruled out. And so definitely some pretty high-end values of spin or helicity, like we call it. So again, almost 300 AGL per meter squared, second squared. So definitely something that we need to keep our eyes on. And so I do want to go back quickly to the Storm Prediction Center's outlook. This time we'll take a look at tomorrow. So again, this is for our event across portions of eastern Oklahoma and mostly Arkansas, so the remnants of tonight's event into tomorrow morning and afternoon. You can see we have a slight level 2 to 5 risk for severe weather, again including most of Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma. That does include a 5% tornado threat in that red shade, a 2% tornado threat in the green shade, a 15% non-hatched wind threat in the yellow shade, and then our hail threat is also 15% non-hatched. But if you take a look at what they are saying for our severe event as we get into tomorrow, is that we could see a couple of tornadoes given the clockwise curved low-level photographs, upwards of 200 meters squared per second squared effective SRH. So again, that's just kind of giving us an idea of what all that information told us, basically, where because we saw such strong spin and helicity, which is SRH, in the atmosphere, and the fact that we did see that very favorable looking photograph, that's obviously going to show a pretty primed environment. But if storms should gradually grow upscale as they move into southeastward into the evening and overnight hours, higher wind and tornado probabilities, they were considered over eastern Oklahoma and into Arkansas given the favorable environment. Though continued uncertainty regarding early day convection and implications on storm mode limit forecast confidence in this time. So, that basically means that they considered upgrading this threat to an enhanced risk, potentially even driven off by tornadoes, and they still are considering it, although there is a very, very high uncertainty in the air whether or not this will be more of a semi-discrete storm mode or a messier linear mode. So if we do see a more uptrend on the models in terms of the storm mode that we see, where we see more spaced out storms where they have room to rotate, that's where we could have the upgrade to an enhanced risk for severe weather. Alright? But we move on here to the tropics. We're going to take a look here at the Atlantic Basin. We're going to look at our current satellite view, and you can see we have quite a few things going on right now. We have a tropical wave that is currently moving its way into the MDR, and it actually is just behind another tropical wave that both of these are actually marked by the National Hurricane Center. So we'll be talking about these in just a second. But we also do have another area of spin or some sort of low pressure system trying to develop out here in the Atlantic. So 3 things that are currently unorganized at the moment that we need to watch. And we also do have Major Hurricane Gabrielle that is currently spinning across portions of the central Atlantic. She just became a Category 3 hurricane, now making a run for Category 4 status. And so that storm will likely go out to sea, not really causing any problems to land, so we will not really talk about that one too much. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright, so we take a look now at the official National Hurricane Center home forecast page here, and you can see we got 3 things going on here marked by the NHC. One, we have Hurricane Gabrielle, again, a major hurricane of Category 3 status, 120 mile per hour sustained winds with a minimum central pressure at around 955 millibars. It is moving north at 10 miles per hour, so again, this will not make any impacts towards the U.S. or really any piece of land here over the next couple of days. To its south, something to watch, we have 2 tropical waves, like we said, looking at it on satellite. We have one area of interest to take a look at here. Again, this has a high 80% chance of development throughout the next 7 days, so there's a likely chance that we're going to see this tropical wave develop. And then there's another one in front of it, which has a 50% chance of development. So the one in red here, the one marked in red, this one has a higher chance of development given from the National Hurricane Center, and then the one in front of it has a 50% chance. So we will have to continue to watch and track both of these over the next couple of days as they look a little bit closer to land rather than Gabrielle, which is continuing to move out to sea. Speaking of Gabrielle, we take a look at the current satellite, and you can see some very, very healthy looking imagery here. Let's pull this up again. But you can see just off the latest satellite scans, a very, very tight and pretty large eye there with a pretty deep amount of convection occurring on the outer eye wall and especially the inner core here. So this is a very, very healthy hurricane, likely making a run for Category 4 status. Will it get there? Not really sure, but the good news is that this is staying out to land. You can see Bermuda right off to your on the left-hand side of your screen. You can just see how close this was to making an impact on Bermuda, but it will continue to move off to the north and west. Again, just bothering the fish out here, but definitely going to make a run at Category 4 status, at least tonight into tomorrow morning. But now, we take a look now at the GFS, as we have to take a look at those 2 tropical waves that were noted there by the National Hurricane Center, and we look at what the GFS is showing for these tropical waves, and you can see as we get into really next weekend, about a week out from today, or at least a couple days ago, you can see we do have that first tropical wave, I should say, begin to show signs of development. It is already a 984 millibar, likely Category 1 hurricane, as we get into next Sunday, and you can see it does go into the Carolina coastline as a 991 likely tropical storm Cat 1 hurricane. Nothing too crazy, but brings likely some very gusty winds and some heavy rainfall, and then it does make that sharp curve off to the east and out to sea due to this oncoming cold front. So that's what the latest GFS shows for it. That was the 12Z. If you look at the 6Z, you're probably thinking, well, it's a little far out, so it's just one around the GFS. Not sure if it's going to develop. Well, the 6Z also shows it, and it actually has a much stronger scenario where we see likely a Cat 1, Cat 2 landfall. Once again on the Outer Banks, except this time it goes a little bit farther up the coastline as the timing of that cold front runs a little bit behind schedule, and that allows it to gain more latitude and move off to the north. So the morning run of the GFS had a little bit of a stronger scenario, whereas the afternoon run of the GFS has a little bit of a weaker scenario. And if you're also wondering, well, what's the GFS show for the second wave? Well, it also shows some sort of development. It does try to get this into a tropical system, and it does continue to make its way off to the north, but at this point we're getting very far out, so there's really no point in looking that far out. But the GFS is definitely picking up on a signal for possible development, again, over the next week or two across the Atlantic. So I definitely do think we could be taking off a name or two from the hurricane names list at the end of September. So based off this run, I definitely do think that there could be some future development that we need to watch out for. And we move things over to the European model, which we can take a look at the Eastern U.S. to get a better look. And what does the European show? Well, it does have, obviously, Gabrielle in the right-hand side of your screen moving its way out. And then does it develop that first wave? Not really. You really just don't see a lot happening, but you do get that second wave to move into the picture. Now, this run only goes out 144 hours, so we don't get to go farther than Sunday. But at the end of this run, the European model does have this the second wave becoming likely a high-end tropical storm, low-end Cat 1 hurricane, again, creeping its way into the Southwest Atlantic. So there's a lot of ways that this storm could go after, let's say this run continues, after that run ends. There's a lot of ways that this storm could go in that scenario, but the European, rather than the GFS just developing that first wave, doesn't develop with the first wave. It has the second wave developing, and it takes a similar track with similar strength. So a lot needs to be figured out over the next couple of days, and obviously you can see lots of model disagreement there. But if we take a look at the GFS ensemble here, we look at the spaghetti plots for our storm tracks, and you can see a pretty good signal for that first wave. Again, bring a lot of these members towards the East Coast, a couple of them even making a landfall on the East Coast, likely, with these members as a high-end tropical storm to low-end Cat 2, high-end Cat 1 hurricanes, so pretty far out to be talking about strength like that, but definitely something to watch here for really all of the East Coast. I definitely would not rule out some possible impacts. Again, we're not even 100% sure if it will develop, but I think if it does develop, there definitely will be the chance for the storm to go a little bit closer to land rather than, what we want it to. Obviously, too close to the U.S. for comfort. And then finally, we look at the European model, and what does the European show? Well, it also does actually have a small signal for that first wave to develop. Excuse me, it does have a couple of members developing it, and it actually does have a few members becoming a pretty strong system, again, likely in the range of tropical storm to Cat 2 hurricane. Most of them do fail to go all the way up the East Coast, but they definitely do support the storm developing and even becoming a named storm. But you can see a much more heavy signal there for the second tropical wave, where we see many members here with a very, very strong signals here for definitely a strong hurricane. And this is something we're going to need to watch, because again, just because that first wave doesn't form does not mean we have nothing else to talk about. So if that first wave doesn't form, then we could also be talking about the second wave, which is actually the one that is dubbed by the National Hurricane Center to have the 80% chance of developing. So if we do see something like what the European model is showing play out, we could be talking about a very significant and potentially dangerous tropical system as we get into this week and eventually into next week. Alright, so that's all I got for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. So I apologize for kind of the lack of quality content, obviously. I did just finish my winter forecast, so if you haven't already, check that out. Make sure you do so right away. It's a great video. I promise you'll enjoy it. But the main thing is that I just got sick. I have a sinus infection, so it's going to be a long time until I return completely to normal. So I do still have a pretty bad cough, but again, I'm just trying my best to get you guys updates. So bear with me over the next couple of days. I'll be trying my best to produce live coverage and severe weather and tropics updates, but obviously I might not be in my tip-top shape or form. So just ask you guys to cut me some slack over the next couple of days, and hopefully we'll be back to 100% normal soon. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you all for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video.